नमस्ते बिटिया, हमेशा खुश रहो बिटिया। Myself, JVN Dr. Ravi Jain, Assistant Professor, Department of Practice of Medicine in Faculty of Homeopathic Science at Jyoti Vidyapeeth Women's University, Jaipur. In this series, we are discussing about the diseases of the hepatobiliary system. In the last lectures, we had discussed about the normal mechanism of bilirubin formation, bile formation. Then next, we had discussed about jaundice. And in today's lecture, we are going to start with ascites. I hope you all must have covered the homework that I had given to you in the past lectures. So today, let's start with ascites. What is ascites? What are the clinical features of ascites? What are the various investigations that could be done in case of ascites and the management of ascites? All these things we are going to discuss in today's lecture. Ascites. What is ascites? Ascites is basically accumulation of free fluid in the peritoneal cavity. So whenever there is free fluid that is accumulated in the peritoneal cavity, this is known as ascites. Ascites can be due to multiple factors. Your homework for today's lecture is you have to see in the book and then you have to tell me how much quantity of liquid is required to be labeled as ascites, and what is the maximum, the minimum and the maximum quantity that is seen. This you have to see from the book or search from the net, and then you have to tell me after this lecture. So there are multiple causes or multiple factors that are responsible for ascites. So ascites is nothing but the accumulation of free fluid in the peritoneal cavity. Ascites can be due to three major factors. It can be due to, number one, hepatic cirrhosis, the most common cause for ascites. It can be due to cardiac failure and malignant diseases. So there are three important causes for ascites. Number one, we have hepatic cirrhosis. Number two, cardiac failure. And number three, malignant diseases. The malignant diseases can be due to hepatic origin, or it can be due to peritoneal causes. So we have three causes for ascites. Number one, hepatic cause or hepatic cirrhosis. Number second is cardiac, that is for the cardiovascular system failure. And the third one is the malignant diseases. The malignancies or the cancer can be of hepatic or the liver, or it can be related to the peritoneal cavity. The other causes for ascites includes, number one, we have hypoproteinemia. Hypoproteinemia means decreased in the protein content or the albumin content. This is seen in multiple diseases. The diseases like, number one, we have nephrotic syndrome. Number two, we have protein losing enteropathy, a disease of the intestine where we are losing protein. And the third one is the malnutrition. So first condition that is responsible for hypoproteinemia, other than the three causes that we had discussed earlier, the three causes were, number one, hepatic cirrhosis, number two, cardiac failure, and the third is malignancies related to the liver or to the peritoneum. The other causes includes, number one, hypoproteinemia, the diseases in which there was decreased protein content in the body or in the blood. It was seen in case of nephrotic syndrome and protein losing enteropathy, and the third one is malnutrition. The other cause for ascites includes pancreatitis. Pancreatitis we are going to discuss later in this chapter. Next is lymphatic obstruction and different type of infections like tuberculosis. There are certain rare conditions like hypothyroidism and renal diseases. So the other causes are divided into 5 causes. Number one, we have hypoproteinemia, we have pancreatitis, we have lymphatic obstructions. Next is the infections like tuberculosis, and the fifth one is rare conditions like hypothyroidism and the renal diseases that are responsible for development of ascites. Now, what is the pathophysiology that is considered under ascites? Ascites, as we all know, is the accumulation of fluid in the peritoneal cavity. The pathophysiology includes, most common and the most important pathophysiology is the splanchnic vasodilatation. The vasodilatation of the splanchnic system means the arteries of the splanchnic system, which includes the greater mesenteric, the lesser mesenteric, and the celiac artery. So splanchnic vasodilatation is the main factor leading to ascites in cirrhosis. So in case of hepatic cirrhosis, splanchnic vasodilatation is the major cause or the leading cause for development of ascites. It is responsible for hypoperfusion of the renal system. Because of the splanchnic vasodilatation, the blood vessels are getting dilated and the blood is getting pooled, because of which there is extravasation of fluid, leading to the accumulation of fluid in the peritoneal space. The free fluid in the peritoneal space, that is known as ascites. Next, this leads to the activation as there is hyperperfusion of the renal system. This leads to the activation of the renin-angiotensin system in the kidneys. Okay. So this leads to activation of renin-angiotensin system with secondary hyperaldosteronism. So there are two mechanisms involved. Number one, splanchnic vasodilatation, and the second one is activation of the renin-angiotensin system. This tends to normalize the arterial pressure. After this mechanism, the arterial pressure is getting normalized, but the salt and water retention takes place. So there is accumulation of water, accumulation of salt, because of which there is ascites. So because of the hypoperfusion of the renal system, this leads to activation of renin-angiotensin system with secondary hyperaldosteronism, leading to the accumulation or retention of salt and water in the body. So the combination of all these mechanisms, combination of splanchnic arterial vasodilatation, the portal hypertension, alters the intestinal capillary permeability. So this alters the intestinal capillary permeability and it promotes the accumulation of fluid within the peritoneum, because of which ascites develops. So there is combination of number one, splanchnic arterial vasodilatation, portal hypertension. It alters intestinal capillary permeability. There is extravasation of fluid and it promotes the accumulation of fluid within the peritoneum. That is known as ascites. Now there is a figure in your book. I have also shown this figure in the e-notes that I have posted in the session. The causes for ascites. Alright, let me show you the picture, how the picture looks like. Alright, you can see that picture from the PPT that I have uploaded, because I don't think it is possible for me to show you with this video going on. So I will show you later on, or you can see all these things from the PPT or the study material that I have uploaded. So because of cirrhosis of the liver, there is a reduced aldosterone mechanism leading to secondary hyperaldosteronism. This acts on the kidneys and leads to the retention of salt and water, leading to ascites. There is another pathway of portal hypertension that is directly responsible for development of ascites. And the third pathway, it includes, due to cirrhosis, there is hypoproteinemia in the body, that is reduced amount of albumin, which decreases the oncotic pressure. Because of the reduced oncotic pressure, there is transudation of fluid in the peritoneum, leading to the development of ascites. Also, because of splanchnic vasodilatation, there is underfilling of the circulation. Underfilling of circulation leads to reduced blood flow in the kidneys, and it ultimately leads to the activation of renin-angiotensin system, accumulation of salt and water in the body, and leading to the development of ascites. So this is shown in the pictorial form in your e-notes in the book as well. So you can consult this picture and for the easy understanding of what I have just told you. Now we come to the clinical features. We have studied what is ascites, what are the different causes of ascites, and the pathophysiology that is involved in ascites. Alright, now we come to the clinical features of ascites. What are the different clinical features? Whenever a patient of ascites is coming to you, what are the different clinical features? What are the signs and symptoms with which a patient can come to you? As we all know, ascites leads to the accumulation of free fluid in the peritoneal cavity. So because of that free fluid, there will be abdominal distension and discomfort. Alright, so there is abdominal distension and discomfort. There is anorexia. Anorexia means there is no desire to eat. Distension of abdomen, discomfort with no desire to eat. there is nausea and early satiety. Early satiety means the patient is getting satiety और जल्दी से पेट भर जाता है. There is heartburn and flank pain. Flank pain means pain in the flank on the sides, and respiratory distress. So because of the ascites, the following features are present. There is abdominal pain, distension and discomfort. There is anorexia, nausea. There is early satiety, heartburn, flank pain and respiratory distress. The other features includes distortion or eversion of the umbilicus. Because of the increased fluid in the peritoneal cavity, there is distortion or eversion of the umbilicus. The umbilicus pops out. There can be hernia. Hernia means abnormal protrusion of the abdominal contents through the abnormal opening, or the weak abdominal muscles, rectus muscles. There can be abdominal stria. Abdominal stria are basically lines that can be seen on the stretch marks. Can be seen on the abdomen. There is divarication of the recti, means the recti muscles are getting separated, and there can be scrotal edema. So I will repeat the clinical features once again. The clinical features includes abdominal distension and discomfort. There is anorexia, nausea, early satiety, heartburn, flank pain, respiratory distress, and the other features include distortion or eversion of the umbilicus, hernia, abdominal stria, divarication of the recti and the scrotal edema. Now, what are the physical signs? Whenever a patient of ascites is coming to us, what are the physical signs with which the patient can present to us? This I have shown you already in the clinical class, and I am going to repeat this once again. If you were not present in that clinical class, then you can see it from the book, or you can also consult YouTube for its videos. Alright, so there are few signs that can be elicited or that can be performed to elicit the accumulation of fluid in the peritoneal cavity, that is ascites. We can see, number one, shifting dullness. There can be shifting dullness. When the patient is shifting to one side and we are percussing, then we can feel the shifting of the fluid across the peritoneal cavity. Next is the fluid thrill. Fluid thrill is the thrilling voice or the vibrations that could be felt on the side of flanks when one strikes one side of the flank and could be seen on the other side. That is fluid thrill. Puddle sign I have already demonstrated you in the classroom. Puddle sign for a very small quantity of fluid can be elicited, and assessment of the liver and spleen could be done in such cases. So the signs includes shifting dullness, we have fluid thrill, we have Puddle sign and elicitation or assessment of the liver and spleen. We can also perform the examination of the periumbilical nodule, that is Sister Mary Joseph nodule, and also left supraclavicular node, that is known as Virchow's node, that is seen in case of malignancies. So we have five things to be examined. Number one, we have shifting dullness, fluid thrill, Puddle sign, assessment of the liver and spleen, and examination of the periumbilical nodule, that is Sister Mary Joseph nodules, or the left supraclavicular lymph node enlargement, that is Virchow's node. Now, what are the various investigations that could be done in case of ascites? Whenever a patient of ascites is coming to us, we can advise following investigation. Number one, we can go for ultrasonography. Number two, total albumin because of hypoalbuminemia. Third is assessment of the amylase. Fourth is neutrophil count. Fifth is cytology. Sixth, paracentesis with ascites fluid analysis. And sixth is microscopy and culture. I will again repeat the investigation. Number one, most common one is the ultrasonography, USG. Second is the assessment of the total albumin. Third is amylase in case of pancreatitis. Fourth is neutrophil count to check for any kind of infections. Next is cytology, then paracentesis, that is checking the ascites fluid for analysis, and microscopy and culture. Now we come to the treatment part. How to treat the case of ascites whenever a patient is coming to us. For treatment of ascites, number one, because we know that there is accumulation of fluid in the peritoneal cavity, there is activation of renin-angiotensin system, so we have to restrict the sodium intake or the salt intake, because the salt is already being stored or accumulated in the body. So we have to restrict the salt intake to 2 grams per day. Diuretics have to be given. Diuretics means the drugs which can induce excessive urine formation and excretion. So diuretics includes spironolactone, and loop diuretics, which includes furosemide. Then paracentesis means draining out the excessive fluid, and we have two types of shunts that could be done. One is TIPS. TIPS is transjugular intrahepatic portosystemic shunt, and the second one is the peritoneovenous shunt. So this is about the treatment. Treatment includes number 1, restriction of sodium intake, number 2, diuretics, third is paracentesis, fourth is shunt. Shunt are of two types, transjugular intrahepatic portosystemic shunt, and the second one is peritoneovenous shunt. The prognosis of ascites, it is usually poor with when it is associated with the cirrhosis of liver, with less than 50% survival of less than 2 years after the onset of symptoms. And there are certain complications which includes renal failure and spontaneous infections. So because of ascites, there can be renal failure and there can be spontaneous infections. So this was all about ascites, and in the next lecture we are going to discuss about acute liver failure. Now it's your homework to consider a therapeutics or the various homeopathic medicines which could be given in case of ascites with indication. So you have to write down all the medicines, homeopathic medicines that could be given in ascites, and you have to write their homeopathic indications, and then you have to send it to me. So this was all about ascites and today's lecture. I hope the lecture is clear to you. If you have any query or if you have any problem, please mention in the comment box and I'll try to resolve it. So in the next lecture, we are going to start with liver failure, both acute and chronic liver failure. So this was all for today. This session is powered by Digital Version 2.0, Jyoti Vidyapeeth Women's University. I hope you are satisfied with my session. If you have any query, please mention in the comment box and I'll try to resolve it. So this was all for today. Thank you very much. Have a good day.